Welcome back to Counterstream. This is a special episode. As you can see, we are in person together in Cologne because we just had the Mera 25 Parteitag, and today was the day of the workshops as well. And it was great to see many members coming out, and it's great to see the organization growing. And we thought before everybody goes to summer break and before everybody takes a little bit time off from constant news pressures and news cycles, maybe we should do a recap of what's been happening and record a little episode, a short one, to talk about the things which have been happening in the last days. And welcome to Counterstream then.
Let's jump right into the topics of the past weeks. Well, we're sitting right now in the rain, but the last 2 weeks have been quite tough temperature-wise. So we had a huge heat wave in Europe, and especially also here in Germany. It was very, very hot, to the point where, society in Germany isn't that prepared for that much heat, right? No air conditioning anywhere, so it was tough, and a lot of recommendation to stay inside. So you can see that there is some health risk for people with these temperatures, and of course, people like to say that, it was hot, decades ago as well. But I think that science shows that it's getting hotter and hotter, and that climate change is becoming a huge problem. Meanwhile, I don't feel that we're doing actually something against it, and that it's an issue that has been kind of put, at the end of the list of things to do in the recent years. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think we have a chance of stopping climate change? I don't think that's realistic, but at least working a bit against it, accelerating, or do you think we should right away jump into, preparing for just hotter temperatures everywhere?
I must admit I'm a little bit of a pessimist when it comes to having a future outlook of how the world is going to look like. And I think part of the reason is because these heat waves that we are now starting to experience in Europe, Pakistan, or countries in the global south have been at the forefront of the climate crisis for the last 2 decades, I would say, more harshly. For me, when I was living in Pakistan, it was very normal to have temperatures in summers between 32 to 39 degrees. Now the normal temperature in Pakistan is 49 to 53 degrees in summers. This is a huge, huge shift, and obviously, this is only one of the problems, because we also have one of the biggest glaciers in the whole world in the north. It's melting at a very fast speed. Floods are a big risk. Also, already, I think in 2023 there was a big flood that displaced, I think, around 10 million people or something like that, and they have never financially recovered to this day. And our government could not care less in Pakistan. And I know it's a different system, it's a different country, of course, but the way EU politicians and international politics, with Trump coming back, Paris Agreement is over. Any kind of climate commitments that states had committed to, they're completely rolling back. They're just following the guideline of the US foreign policy or climate policy, and just giving into the hysteria of, it's not important right now. At the same time, right now, there is also wildfires in Crete, in Greece, in Turkey. Thousands of people have been evacuated, and it's really, really it's an existential threat that we are already facing. And already in the last few years, Greece and Turkey both have been facing quite a lot of wildfires. And I think it's time to actually get prepared and not to expect that our politicians are going to change from one day to the other. I think we have crossed 7 planetary boundaries already. I think, if I'm not wrong, I think I saw something about an article from a Japanese climate scientist who wrote a very pessimistic overview of what is happening and what is the future, and he said we should just start preparing for the worst case scenario. So sorry to break it to you, but I'm not an optimist in this regard, especially because we don't see anything about the green transition anymore. We don't hear it in the news. We only hear it when it's like a heat wave and people are, worried and are at risk. People are starting to talk about we are having problems, like real issues such as school closures or so, and then it it's in the news cycle, and then the politicians start to be like, oh yeah, we need to do something about the climate, but then nothing follows through. No policy action ever follows through. On the other hand, just to give you a short example, I was speaking to a friend of mine in the Netherlands, and she's doing exactly this research on adaptation and mitigation to fight with the heat, because like Northern Europe, Western Europe, it's not made for this heat, right? So school buildings basically have glass on top of them to store heat because they were cold countries, right? Now with heat waves and extreme temperatures, when she was interviewing some people at the school to ask like how the teachers are dealing with it, and they said it's horrible. They have been complaining about it since the last few years. Management doesn't do shit, and the government has no plans in place to help schools cope with it. The only solution the management gives them is do water games. Take the children out and play with the water. And they're like, how many times do we play with the water? And and children are more at risk of getting a heat stroke when the temperatures are more extreme. So it's a real issue, and unfortunately we are not prepared.
But it's so typical of a capitalistic society, in my opinion, because now also with the heat waves and schools and kindergartens, I know that my two boys are still at the kindergarten. Leaving now, but they wrote like a message, please pick up your kids earlier. So most parents would kind of adapt and then pick up their kids earlier, but there was also kind of what I saw on uproar on social media discussion where people were like, well, it's no different if my kids are hot at home, and also have to work and also this and that. So people are kind of like not really seeing the danger in certain situations because life, because I have to work and I cannot manage to, pick up my child earlier, which is understandable on one hand, but on the other hand, it doesn't click with people that there is an issue that will get worse. So also we're not talking necessarily about worse within our generation. So the worst things to come are like in a time period where it's really like future generations having to pay the biggest prices for what we are missing now. So it's kind of, such an ignorant state to be in, to not see like the science already and be like, oh my God, if that gets worse, my children or my children's children will really have a devastating world to live in. And also, there were already maps kind of showing that Europe will become more like a desert in a couple hundred years, if, like it's developing right now. So I look at it and I'm like, oh shit, most people look at it and like, yeah, well, that's kind of, just a picture, like a model and so on. So yeah, but, we have money to spend in Europe and we're spending it on something different, right? We like to spend it on weapons and military, because we want to be safe, and that's what makes you say more weapons make you safer, and that's kind of a very big logic here. The US is pushing for countries in NATO to pay 5% of their GDP for military. Well, let's talk about that briefly, and also point out that there's one country actually resisting this weird kind of development in NATO, and that is Spain. I'm handing it over to you.
Well, we just had to move quickly. It started raining, and we had to change our location. But we'll continue the discussion now. I think where we left off things was the military spending increase, and in terms of where the money is not going, which was climate, and where it's going is military. And I think it's like one of the biggest paradigm shifts that we can observe right now in Europe, as well as all over the world, of course, but mostly in Europe, because this NATO alliance, which just commissioned that, okay, like all states have to provide 5% of the GDP just for military from 2030. It's a big shift, because we have to see it in terms of like, then Europe is also becoming a military industrial complex, which the US has been for the last, since the Second World War actually. And we only know how much destruction and death and damage the US has caused all over the world because it was a military-industrial complex, and when you do have the weapons and you want to make more money off of wars, you just start a war. And unfortunately, I think this is the direction that Europe is also now heading into.
I mean, also in terms of becoming a machinery with its own military, additionally, because of course you had Rheinmetall and here like Lockheed and Martin, who are producing weapons in Europe and selling them for decades already. But I think the biggest deal change is that Europe is now kind of, I mean, imagine Germany being encouraged to militarize, which is mind-blowing because I've grown up in Germany, right? So the biggest mantra of society in Germany was not just the never again in terms of the genocide, but never again also in terms of, never again to solve geopolitical issues with military and to always strive for peace and so on. I'm aware that Germany has broken that several times by supporting several wars, especially backing the U.S. In wars. But it's a paradigm shift, a huge one, which paired with what we talked about before, which is climate change and the future generations. It's also for future generations problematic if we have this militarized world where again warmongering and fear are the basis of politics, right?
Yeah, I think it's just mind-boggling to me how the European Union went from starting off in the neoliberal era as this peace project, human rights, we are so anti-war and we are so pro-human rights, to we need to counter a threat which is Russia, which is in a war since 3 years, but now apparently is the moment where they're like, we have a real threat, and the war can start in Europe anytime, and you're like, okay, but you also have to see it that this is like not just interests of geopolitical powers to dominate. This is purely also economic interests. Like, look at the European economic industries. Like, they are completely going down the drain, especially in Germany, where there has been no innovation since, since like cars were first a thing, and then we just, like in Germany just gave up. They're like, okay, this is our brand, this is our brand identity, and let's just carry on with it. And now, obviously, like with changing times, a lot of Germans also, we already feel that there's a lack of innovation, there's a lack of investment in green, like the green transition, a clean economy. These kinds of things are just not, on the agenda. They're not being, even like small startups, which, like positively impact the economy or something, they don't get so much support from the government. In fact, they have extra hurdles when you compare to the rest of the states in the European Union or the world. And instead of like moving from this traditional bureaucratic, traditional industry and traditional economy, Germany took one step backwards and said, okay, how about, I have an idea. How do we rescue our failing economy? Let's just make weapons again. We know how it's done. We've done it before, so let's just do that.
I saw a meme recently of, it said, oh my God, AI will take away our jobs. And then it said,
thank God I'm in Germany.
Exactly. So it reminds me of that, which is so true. And also with the cars, there was enough opportunity to, jump on the train of innovation in car industry. So China took that lead, and the German automobile industry was just being like, no, we can get away with what we're doing for another few decades. So, of course, it's kind of a very desperate attempt to create like economical growth by just making weapons deals. And I think also we have to point out that Putin profits from the situation because his perception, or the perception that he sells in Russia, is that NATO and Europe is a threat, right? So if now the other side is militarizing, so he can say, look how aggressive they are towards us. So this is a perfect scenario for all authoritarian governments, and also a perfect scenario for all those in power who want to stay in power also. So people really have to, for peace, we have to hit the streets. Like, we cannot just let our governments do whatever they want, because they're not going to work towards peace. This is definitely working towards worse than Cold War scenario, what we are witnessing, in my opinion.
Absolutely. What I also must say on this topic of militarization is that, you know, it's so hypocritical the way this topic is presented in the global north, or like or Western Europe, or NATO states, however you want to classify it, because it's like, oh yeah, Iran is building their nuclear weapons, we need to attack Iran. Okay, but what the fuck is wrong with us putting 5% of the GDP, and we are so proudly like, you know, like, oh yeah, we have a strong Europe now, we have a strong Europe against a real threat and everything, you know. So like, it's so much arrogance in like among European politicians and political discourse, where, you know, like other countries who are militarizing or something. I mean, I don't want Iran to build nuclear capacities, you know, just to make it clear, but just the arrogance of it and so much hypocritical stances. We stand for peace, but we want more military. We want more weapons, like, it's been always this like stance towards countries in the global south, not just Iran. There have been many, like it was the same script when Iraq was invaded in 2003, that they're building weapons of mass destruction. They dethroned the Saddam Hussein dictator back then, which was very important to the US as well. Almost 1 million people in Iraq were killed as in the aftermath of US invasion in Iraq. So, you know, this kind of stuff, like, okay, so either you say that you let others have the same playing field as well, or you know, yourself also restrict yourself, you know. This 5% GDP, it's a big shift, because it also means mandatory military conscription in many states. It means that when you do have the weapons, you have to use it somewhere, you have to test them. It means an economy which is built on war, which is built on bloodshed, which profits from others' suffering. So things are just going to get worse, and they were never good anyway. And just to, you know, close it off like this, why I think this deterrence doesn't work is because, I mean, when Russia invaded Ukraine, I mean, Russia also justified it as, yeah, it was in response to NATO's expansionism, right? And after Russia invaded Ukraine, now we are expanding as well, so Russia will expand as well. So where is the bottom? Is there a bottom? I don't think so. It means just more wars.
Yeah. I think that is kind of the, you know, this term pops up here and there, war economy, right? Yeah. So it's a specific kind of state which a country can be in, is to have a war economy. And what I've read, interestingly, and I think people can look that up, I'm not going to, you know, explain it much further, but what I find interesting, the few points on it, is it's very difficult to come out of a war economy. This is why I think, this is what I think they will want to do in Europe, is you just have different measurements, and it's just a very different situation, and you can justify a lot of shit with it. Like, for example, now, cutting social budgets in Germany, like where the government, or the new government, has made kind of the promise to cut energy costs for everyone, and now they're cutting energy costs for companies, they're cutting energy costs for corporations, huge corporations, but they're not cutting energy costs for, you know, the energy taxes for, you know, the common people. Yeah. So now Germans are pissed, which is, of course, you know, a good reason, legit. But it shows that, I mean, we knew that this government will not hold its promises in that regard, but it shows that this is how they want to proceed now. They will go, no, we're taking it away from you. And we will spend it on the military-industrial complex, you know. Yeah. It's just we're shoveling the money in that direction, and you will suffer for it, period. Yeah. And you will not demand that we change the plan, because, okay, of course you can demand, but we will just tell you that, no, these are scary times, you know, and everyone has to do their part, and your part is to bleed out. So this is devastating, I think, also in terms of economy for the people. So I'm really curious to see when people are going to wake up to the fact that they're getting scammed, in my opinion. They're getting scammed.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that you can see there's one left government in Europe, which is Spain, which is resisting a lot of this EU bullshit that's happening, which is impressive in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. What we need to remember is that what is happening in the US right now with Trump and what has happened in the US over the last few decades, this is a very likely scenario in the next 10 years or like in the next 20 years would be happening the same way in Europe as well. Because we have already, the rise of the far-right governments is already there. Now we're laying the groundwork for them to completely become like a fascist militaristic union, especially if, I mean, it's like a key states that play a role in the European Union, right? Like it's Germany, it's France, and then then like other states, I mean, they don't matter too much. It's mostly like the Northern Bloc which holds the power. Once these two states or a few more are becoming completely right-wing, we have the military-industrial complex in place, we have populist or fascist leaders coming to power. Sorry, but that's exactly what we are seeing in the US. This will happen also in the European Union.
Yeah. I think when we just sat down, you read the news that Elon Musk wants to create a party, right? So to break the two-party system, which
he calls it a one-party system.
A one-party system. Well, he's not so wrong on that. In many points, there is no difference between Democrats and Republicans in the U.S. for sure. I don't think it's worth talking too much about it because I think this is also part of the whole media stunt that Trump and Elon are pulling off all the time to just also keep being in the news and keep being interesting. So, of course, Elon Musk will not break the two-party or one-party system. Probably he will get deported by Trump faster than that, right? So I think this is a dangerous public show which distracts people from the facts, what is in the big, beautiful bill, for example. They're not paying attention with that. Not paying attention with the IC deportations and so on. So this is what kind of my conclusion was with all of these public, bitch fight between Elon and Donald Trump, is that it's very helpful in distracting from the real problems, the real kind of way that he paves for himself to become a full dictator at some point.
Absolutely. And while he presents himself as the master broker of peace, on the latest peace deals that Trump has negotiated is the a peace deal between Rwanda and DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, where there has been a lot of fighting, there has been a lot of violence, a lot of people have been killed over the last few decades, and of course the US was supporting the militia, the M23 rebels, and now suddenly he's coming out with, oh yeah, we have made peace, and the thing is that they are getting around like $2 trillion worth of minerals. We're talking about the Prince of Peace, Donald Trump, brokering a peace deal between DRC and Rwanda, Democratic Republic of Congo. And the thing is, like, the US is going to get $2 trillion worth of minerals from DRC now in exchange for the peace that Donald Trump brokered. That is 1/10 of the minerals of DRC, and I'm pretty sure they're getting, they're not getting the best out of it, this deal. They are the losers of this deal. Because also the M23 rebels, which were completely backed by the US, I mean, they were creating the problem to then come in with a solution and then also take the resources that they have. And these minerals, they're critical minerals because like with AI, there's more need for chips, which have like particular minerals, and the access with China is a little bit, the US mineral access to China is a little bit broken because of the whole tariff fiasco that's going on. And once again, what we are seeing is that an African country which is unstable and instability created by the US, created by Western powers, is going through a situation of economic colonization once again. Because, I mean, it's not a deal if it's coming to you with, like, either you take the deal or we remove you from power or we start a coup or, we create more instability or we give you war and we kill your people. This is not a deal at all. So it's really, really sad. It's really unfortunate because this is a cycle of economic colonization which has been going on for decades, not just with US being the perpetrator, but France has also done it in the past, Germany has done it in the past, that African countries are kept at the bottom of the economic supply chain as sources of cheap raw materials. They are never allowed to develop the capacities to use those minerals for their own gain, to develop their own economies, to become developed and independent. You know, Africa is extremely resourceful, and it's also one of the poorest continents. It's not like there's no weather conditions for growing food. Why do they have food scarcity? Because we
poor in money, not poor in resources.
Exactly, right? Exactly. The reason that they have food scarcity is because, you know, Europeans planted sugar plantations there, coffee plantations there, instead of allowing an organic agricultural-based economy which supports the local people with the food that they could actually grow and eat. The climate conditions allow it. It was the economic colonization and the colonization by Western Europe that did not allow that these societies develop in a certain way. And even now we see that there's extreme exploitation of human beings in DRC. There's kids working on minefields. Like 10-year-old kids, it's like extremely hard work to work on those minefields, and then they get extremely low money for it as well. They get peanuts.
Remember, or we don't remember per se, but there was kind of in the 80s this Live Aid for Africa and so on, where they would show pictures of hungry children in Africa and so on. So the whole Western VIP world musicians would get together, or you have the song, well, do they know it's Christmas time in Africa, which always kind of was mind-blowing to me, because I'm like, do you think it's important that they know it's Christmas time, you asshole? Like, this is where they made kind of like, that's almost like making fun of Africa, right? Yeah. Because you're just exploiting. Additionally to exploiting, you're exploiting now the fact that you're exploiting them for your own purposes, to show the world what a great person you are because you talk about it. So I kind of think that there is the sentiment that people know that something, you know, in Africa people are poor, I don't necessarily think that they can connect it to colonialism, or that they think that, you know, parts of their cell phone come from resources in Africa and so on, and the Chinese are building them together then, so they come to Europe and then can buy them. Yeah. So, but I think it's a topic where it's getting now more interesting that there's so many leaders in Africa that show up that are very anti-colonialist. Yes. And they're very outspoken and are building kind of this movements and you know, strength to really oppose the Western powers within. Yeah. But on the other hand, you have, of course, kind of, there's a lack of backing on the side of people in the West, where they have to pressure their governments for the change to be real. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's Africa or any other country. It's what you said with interventionism of the US. Yeah. If somebody doesn't suit them, they just get rid of that person, right? So if something is uprising anywhere and is trying to challenge the status quo, they will just, you know, cut it down, assassinate the person, put them in jail, frame them, whatever, and that's that. So it kind of comes down to that something must change in the West. Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of a sad realization, because we have to be honest, Western people don't like to change much.
Yes. Yeah, just to give you a few words on the white saviorism that you were describing, because it's so disrespectful, because, you know, Many of these celebrities, they made a career, like, I think some of them might have had good intentions, but I really don't think that they thought through the message that they're conveying to the world, which is that, oh yeah, Africa is so poor, and we white people, we need to help them, like it's only humanitarian aid. And we know that humanitarian aid has not worked in building an country's economy. It is not the source of, like, yes, there's many corrupt countries in the global south which rely heavily on aid to exploit, people further, but this is not the thing which is like advancing their economies and their development and getting them out of poverty, and this has been the case for a very long time. The way humanitarian aid has been structured, the way the UN has worked, like it's a big case of neoliberalism, and what has been happening so far in the international relations sphere in terms of humanitarian aid. But this economic dependency, economic colonization, these are the structural issues that we must counter and that we must understand and learn more about to understand how Africa remained poor while the West got richer and richer, exploiting the resources that were there, exploiting the people, bringing them here as enslaved workers and so on. So, there's so much to be unpacked on this topic, but yeah, it's a limited scope. We are kind of like, also trying to connect here the topic of the UN, the humanitarian aid structures, which are completely failing and are underfunded, have been systematically underfunded, and have heavily relied on the US for their programs, for their work. And now with the US basically cutting back on everything, these programs, these institutions are completely in a big problem, like UNHCR, World Food Program. Crazy amounts of money has been cut. And the UN is increasingly losing its relevance in the world. I mean, it started as a neoliberal project in the first place. Like, in the West, we think that, oh, our governments are bad, but at least the UN is good. The UN is just a representation of all governments, and I don't think there's even one government which is, like, oh yeah, we're the best ones and we stay like that, it's always changing. So they are all bad. And now the UN General Assembly has made Annalena Baerbock, Germany's foreign minister, the president of the UN General Assembly. And that shows you already that this institution is not to be trusted.
First of all, on the UN, it's kind of like a lawmaker's machine, like a policy machine. Like policies to just have them, period. So it's kind of like it started as a different thought, but it became this bureaucratic shit, which is just simply representatives coming together, discussing their resolutions, having no impact on the world and nothing. They're not able to really, they can advocate for peace, but they're not able to intervene. Also, putting boots or blue helmets on the ground comes down to which country is volunteering to do that and so on. So nobody wants to spend their soldiers on crisis, because you could have said, okay, you make Gaza, for example, a humanitarian zone, put blue helmets on the ground. But the biggest arguments against that I've heard are, who will do it? Because, Israel has attacked UN personnel in Lebanon already. So people have died. So are you sending your soldiers into their death? And isn't that kind of also the pointing out of what is happening there, right? So what is the UN? I mean, for me, it's one of the most disappointing projects on the planet, because it could be super impactful when it comes to peace, when it comes to diplomacy, etc. But it's a shit show. Yeah. And Baerbock is kind of now the king of the shit show, the queen of the shit show, I'm sorry. And I mean, she was in the German previous government, she was the Minister for Foreign Affairs. She is, I think you could say she's a Zionist, although I don't know if she ever has said said that in that, phrased that in that way, but she could, I'm saying that because she could also be just a coward, you know what I mean? Yeah. Where she's just saying, it's Staatsräson to support Israel, so that's what I'm doing. So I'm not sure with her which one it is. Both are bad. So now she became the president of the UN. Which why and how? Yes. To be honest, yes. Because this seems to me like vitamin B kind of scenario where she met people that know people. And then like, okay, I'm not going to be anymore in the government in Germany. So she kind of found that spot for herself.
I think with Baerbock, I think she's a typical example of a career politician who was first the foreign minister and then she moved on to the UN. And usually, like once politicians, like their political careers are over, they're being sent to, international institutions such as the EU or the UN or something like that. However, with Baerbock, the thing is that she was in office as the foreign minister for the last 3.5 years, something like that. And the genocide in Gaza also started exactly during that time. And she has made very inflammatory statements in front of the UN and at the German Bundestag, the parliament, claiming stuff like that civilian objects can lose their protected status under international law if terrorists are abusing them, which is completely false, first of all, because that is just not how international law applies. This is something that even Francesca Albanese called out when she heard about it. I would really like to ask Baerbock, would you bomb a school full of 24 German kids, a kindergarten, because there's a Hamas commando base underneath? I mean, is this fucking imaginable even in Germany or in Europe? Like, would she even do this to Ukrainian children? Never. So, how can you justify attacks on refugee tents? How can you justify attacks on hospitals where, like, vulnerable patients are hiding? And schools and justifying it in front of the United Nations, the sole protector institution of international law. It's extremely, extremely painful to see that. It triggered and made many people in the Palestine solidarity movement within Germany extremely sad, because for the last 3 years she has just been justifying, and I would call her a Zionist, I think, because she has just been justifying a very hardliner pro-Zionist position that Israel is defending itself and nothing in Gaza is important. Obviously, she has made some statements like, oh, look at the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Israel needs to control itself. And at some point, it was such a coward move. It was such a coward move and ridiculous one. So she wanted Israel to sign a paper that they're not committing war crimes because she said she wanted to comply with international law. This is the most German bullshit ever, let me just get some proof. She knows what's happening. She knows exactly what's happening, and she is still doing it. And this is disgusting.
Themselves, don't worry.
Yeah, she's a war criminal, and now she gets to be the head of the UN General Assembly. So the UN has no principles, in my opinion, because how can you even do such an appointment? Obviously, states vote for it, and, it's like a democratic procedure and so on, but it's also a lot of they need to sanction her. This is not a person who should be sitting at the UN General Assembly. Baerbock claims, by the way, that she has studied international law from LSE, and she has been very proud about it. She has publicly claimed, oh, I'm so educated, I studied international law. And then she proceeded to shit on international law. For the last 3 years, she did not give a shit about international law. Same statements made about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They are attacking schools, they are attacking hospitals. How this is the violations, most serious violation. Same stuff happening in Gaza. No, this is self-defense. So, this is a clear hypocrite who understands how international law works, but proceeds to justify it when it's relating to Palestinian people or maybe even other people,
You're absolutely right. I think my opinion of her was never really high, because I think that she is a career politician, and I think she has made clear that her principles is to do what's good for herself. Yeah. So that sounds crazy maybe, but I appreciate more when somebody just says, I'm doing 100% what's best for me, and is committing to the either side, being like, okay, I'm going to support Israel no matter what, and I'm going to justify things no matter how, and I'm going to be hypocritical about things, but I'm going to do that 100% always, So we know what we're working with here, but there are others who are playing this pretend game all the time, where they're like, no, I'm in solidarity with everyone, kind of thing, you know. So in that regard, you have with her a super incompetent person, which didn't do much in her position as a foreign minister, where you can say, oh, that's some outstanding work. Everything went to shit during her time. And not, I mean, of course, not everything happened because of her, but, you know, she wasn't impactful in any regard. So her speeches are shit, to be honest. I mean, either side, left or right, cannot listen to her without being like, oh my God, you know? So imagining her being at the UN General Assembly and holding a speech is like, what? Like, how many sessions will they have before they realized what the fuck they elected into this position, you know? I'm very curious to know that. But I think we have also a campaign about her, right?
One of the biggest tellers of her failure is she started her career as foreign minister with the ambitious goal of leading with a feminist foreign policy. Nobody understood, first of all, what that meant, because it was not clear what is a feminist foreign policy, first of all. Second of all, the committee or the organization that she started, I think it was all women, it was like researchers, academics, you know, a collection of very, very brilliant people. All of them resigned publicly in defiance of the fact that what she says in terms of feminist foreign policy is not being respected in Gaza, and we don't believe in her. So, you know, this was a big, big symbolic move from civil society, people who come from the civil society. Unfortunately, it didn't get much attention, but, you know, this is a big, big gesture that she started something like a committee, and then all these women, they were like, no, we're resigning because we don't agree with your foreign policy. And now moving on to the campaign, Progressive International and the M25, we are launching a campaign to block Baerbock. That's the name of the campaign. You should sign it, you should share it, you should talk about it, and if you are in any way like making content or, you know, you have a platform, use it to raise awareness for it, to get signatures for it, because our goal is to block Baerbock from becoming the head of the UN General Assembly. She will take her position in about like 60 days. I think it was around the first few days of September that she's getting into office. She has been elected already, but I think we should still, as civil society, challenge in the public discourse and in the public, you know, through public means like going out for protests, organizing campaigns, sharing information to inform ourselves, like, why is a war criminal leading one of the UN institutions as the head? Keep your eyes open.
Also, I think it's worth, again, looking at the von der Leyen petition that we have. Also. Because, you know, there would be a vote of confidence with her in the parliament, I think, this week, which she will probably win because all the neoliberals, you know, social democrats already said that they are kind of condemning the step from the Romanian fraction. Yeah. So I think this will not be very fruitful. But yeah, I think we can wrap it up at this point. Yeah. This was an interesting special episode, which was much more fun to do in person, to be honest. I mean, of course, now everyone is kind of going on vacation, so we will also take a summer break, and I think come back in September probably. Yeah. Maybe a bit earlier, but let's see. So we hope you enjoyed this. We also have a lot of ideas of what to do with Counterstream in the future, so it might change up a bit. So yeah, I wish everyone a good summer, and I give the word to you because I think you can also recommend some stuff for people if they have time now in summer, right?
Well, my recommendation would be, I think we all could use some good break away from the news, from the sensationalization of news, and go a little bit deeper into getting knowledge about things that we care about. And, you know, instead of reading about things on a surface level, maybe engaging in a more meaningful way, reading a book, attending some seminars, or if you have some extra time, you know, So I don't have something on my mind right now that I could recommend you, but I would say stay still informed, because things are absolutely going bad in Gaza, things are going bad in Europe as well, things are going bad in the US as well. Stay strong as civil society, and we hope that this platform can become a place where we exchange our critical perspectives, and we are sharing also like our perspectives like from a leftist movement, and we hope that it's bringing something new to the table and cutting the noise a little bit from the way that news are conducted and the way our attention is being commodified every single second. And I hope to see you soon, and have a nice summer break.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah. Oh God, we're getting red. Is it going to get worse? Do you have an umbrella? We could also get an umbrella.
Yeah, I don't.
We're waiting for you to leave. Okay, so no time pressure now. My train is cancelled. I hate this. I need to take a train.